Welcome, seekers of forgotten horrors. Tonight, we plunge into a chapter of history stained with betrayal, cruelty, and the cold arithmetic of power. The man at the center. A monarch whose name is etched in loathing. Not a tyrant from some faraway dynasty, but one who ruled the green hills and muddy fields of medieval England. King John, youngest son of Henry II, brother to the famed Richard the Lionheart. You stand now among whispers and shadowed halls where the walls themselves recall screams long faded and blood once dripped from royal hands. Imagine the crown not as golden splendor, but as a ring of thorns. If you lived under John, your life was worth only the coin you could offer, or the threat you posed. You would not have survived this. Before we descend further, consider marking this video for those who dare to witness history's true brutality. Subscribe if you crave these forgotten truths. Post your location and local time in the comments, a chilling reminder of current safety. Now steel your nerves, prepare for discomfort, and let the grim echoes of the past consume us. You hear the ironclad hooves thunder across the rain-soaked countryside. Richard is dead shot by a crossbow bolt in a petty skirmish. His famed crusader heart stopped, not by a Saracen blade, but by a provincial rebel. With the Lionheart buried and still warm, John wastes no time. He races not to mourn, but to claim what he sees as his. But the land does not accept him. Normandy distrusts him. His own nephew Arthur of Brittany, a mere boy, is seen as the legitimate heir. You watch nobles weighing their options not from loyalty, but from fear of backing the wrong corpse maker. John begins his rule by taking hostages from the nobility children, brothers' wives. He holds them not as a warning, but as bargaining chips soaked in dread. When rebellious nobles in Aquitaine rise against him, he orders their family members maimed. Not executed, mutilated, a living message that screams louder than death. Grim truth number one: John inherited more than a kingdom. He inherited his father's paranoia and sharpened it into policy. He does not trust his barons. He does not trust the church. He does not even trust his own household knights. And so he lashes out preemptively, keeping loyalty through blackmail, not respect. Arthur, the child who dares threaten John's throne, is captured after the Battle of Mirabeau in 1202. You stand in the damp stone keep where John meets the boy. The guards step outside. The door closes. The next morning, Arthur is never seen again. Historians still fiercely debate whether John murdered him with his own hands. Some say he stabbed the child during a drunken rage. Others that he threw him into the River Seine with chains around his ankles. All agree the boy died in terror, and no one was punished. Grim truth number two: even in a brutal age, this act disgusted Europe. When rumors spread barons desert him, the French crown declares him an outlaw. His continental holdings begin to slip Normandy. Anjou, Maine, all crumble lost not in battle, but in revulsion. And still, John refuses self-reflection. He demands more money from his lords, more troops, more control. He believes loyalty can be bought and betrayal crushed. The nobility call him softsword behind closed doors, not for lack of violence, but for lack of honor. You can be feared, or you can be respected. John is neither. He's only obeyed when others fear what will happen to those they love. Grim truth number three: the Plantagenets were a dynasty built on calculated cruelty, but John broke the balance. Where his father tortured in secret and Richard killed in war, John crushed from behind curtains, choked allies in quiet, and made his cruelty personal. You walk through the corridors of Winchester, once a royal palace. You hear not the chants of a court, but the hiss of bribes, the shuffle of frightened servants, the rustle of parchments bearing names to be erased. A noble's daughter once laughed when John entered a feast hall late and drunk. Days later, her tongue is cut out. The tale is whispered in convents never written, but the fear is real. Her father pledges soldiers to the king, then vanishes in France. His lands are absorbed, his title never reassigned. You witness a reign not of royal grandeur, but of whispered threats and unexplained deaths. The blood on the crown is no longer metaphor, and the stench of burnt parchment, destroyed charters, erased names fills your nostrils. This is how John's rule begins, not with glory, but with silence, enforced by fear. You hear the groan of wooden gates cracking under pressure. A castle in revolt. Inside, the air is thick with rot and despair. Food ran out a week ago. The people inside noble women, squires' children, have begun boiling leather for soup. But John does not lift the siege. He waits patient, cruel, calculating. This is his weapon now, starvation. Castles are not just stone, they are lungs of resistance, each one a fortified breath of defiance against John's tyranny. And so he chokes them, slowly. At Rochester Castle in 1215, rebel barons hold the keep against him. You stand beside the besiegers. You hear the king's order, cold and methodical, undermine the tower use pig fat to burn the supports. The fire takes. The tower collapses. Still the defenders resist. So John cuts off all supply lines. He does not storm the walls, he surrounds them with hunger. Weeks pass. Men begin eating their horses. Women chew cloth. A child dies each morning and the smell of sickness rises like steam from the walls. Then John gives his chilling command, no quarter. When the castle finally falls, he does not grant mercy. He hangs the rebel leaders and leaves their bodies twisting in the wind, visible from miles away, warnings in flesh. Grim truth. 1 John saw sieges, not as military operations, but as moral extermination. To resist him was not warfare, it was heresy. And so you watch as castle after castle becomes a tomb. At one siege in 1210, he corners the de Braos family in a Welsh fortress. William de Braos had once served him faithfully until he refused to give John hostages. The price for that loyalty, death. You watch John take William's wife Maud and his young son. They are not killed cleanly. They are imprisoned in Windsor Castle and left to starve to death. Witnesses later say the guards heard screaming for days, then nothing. When the door was finally opened, the floor was covered in claw marks and gnawed bones. Grim truth too. Even in an age of dungeon justice, this act shocked the nobility. Killing a noble's family was one thing, letting them starve in your own palace. That was madness masquerading as monarchy. Historians still fiercely debate whether John planned it as punishment or simply forgot about them. But it doesn't matter. The result was the same rot, filth and corpses in the house of England's king. John's use of starvation becomes infamous, not just for its cruelty, but its precision. He doesn't just want surrender, he wants the surrender to be slow, broken, humiliating. In the northern counties, when tax collectors report resistance, John sends sheriffs with written orders, seize their stores. Burn what you cannot carry. Block every path, let them eat bark. You ride with these men through smoke-choked villages. The bread ovens are cold, the wheat fields scorched, the rivers choked with fish guts and burnt boats. Grim truth number 3, starvation, was not a side effect of rebellion. It was the sentence. Entire communities were reduced to wandering corpses, the living envying the dead. You reach Bristol, where a merchant refused to pay one of John's spontaneous levies. He is shackled not in chains but by hunger. placed in a sealed cell. Food is placed just out of reach, bread that taunts water, that evaporates. It takes 9 days for his screaming to stop. The guards are paid extra not to look away. John turns famine into a form of communication: obey or starve. His messengers carry not just scrolls but rumors of nobles who fed their own children, of ladies reduced to skeletons of hostages found gnawing stone. Whether true or not, these tales serve the king better than any army. Historians note a chilling pattern in John's campaign strategies. He leaves no viable harvest. It is not enough to defeat. He must erase. And yet, even as entire counties are reduced to begging, John demands more. He imposes taxes to fund military campaigns in France, campaigns that fail one after another. When no gold is left, he demands crops. When no crops are left, he takes livestock. When no livestock, he demands hostages. The land becomes a skeleton, and still John demands it keep marching. At Basing Castle, after weeks of siege, the defenders finally surrender. The gates creak open. Women fall to their knees. John enters and executes them anyway. No pardon, no terms, just a nod and the sword comes down. You stand in the aftermath. The wind carries the stench of blood and rot. Vultures circle above burned fields. A child cries, but no one moves to comfort her. They're too weak, too afraid, too broken. You realize something then. John does not just want obedience. He wants obliteration. The castle at Mirabeau stands crooked against the sky. Its battered walls, charred edges, and hollow windows bear witness to one of the most infamous episodes in King John's spiral into calculated savagery. It is the year 1202. You ride with him now hard through the hills of western France. His nephew, Arthur of Brittany, has risen in revolt, supported by rebellious nobles and the French crown. And worse, he has captured John's own mother, Eleanor of Aquitaine. But John does not panic. He does not parley. He does not pause. Instead, he moves with brutal precision, marching day and night without rest, catching the rebel army completely by surprise. Mirabeau falls in hours, not days. The defenders are cut down trying to flee. The rest surrender. They expect ransom. They expect the rules of noble warfare. They are fools. John takes 250 captured knights' men of high birth names known across Christendom, and he does not free them. He does not even execute them, which might have at least given them dignity. He has them chained to walls in a French dungeon, left in filth, left in silence. No food, no trial, no contact. Weeks pass. Some die in their chains. Others go mad. A few try to kill themselves with fragments of bone. Grim truth number one: John did not break the rules of war, he shattered them entirely. Even in a brutal age, ransom was sacred. He desecrated it, and in doing so, desecrated his kingship. You walk the corridors of Corfe Castle, another of John's favorite prisons. Their 22 captured knights from Brittany are taken held in isolation. They never return. Later accounts describe their fate. One group starved, another hanged, some mutilated and thrown into pits. One witness claims John personally ordered their eyes gouged, not to kill, but to render them useless as soldiers. At least one prisoner, a nobleman, was kept alive and forced to eat his own fingers after attempting escape. You don't know if it's apocryphal. It doesn't matter. In John's realm, truth and terror are interchangeable. Grim truth, number 2, the massacre at Mirabeau, was not a moment of desperation. It was a message sent to every corner of England and France. There would be no rules in John's war. Historians still fiercely debate whether the decision to imprison the knights was part of a broader plan, or whether John was simply reacting in cold rage. But this much is known: not a single noble soul captured at Mirabeau was ever ransomed. A medieval record of names shows them disappearing like ash in wind, erased. The effect is immediate. French barons begin defecting. Even some English lords question their allegiance, because if John can do this to fellow nobles, what chance does a simple landholder or town mayor have? And still you ride with John. He is quiet in council, his voice low, his eyes distant. When a knight pleads for the life of his brother captured in the skirmish, John smiles faintly and says nothing. That brother is later found impaled on a broken stake, his body left unburied, swarmed by insects. At Mirabeau, John took more than prisoners. He took his last chance at legitimacy. The Pope begins to turn against him. So do the barons. But John believes fear is stronger than faith. He gambles everything on cruelty. You feel the damp stone of prison walls now. Hear the slow drip of water from cracks above. See the outlines of once proud men reduced to moaning sacks of flesh. A priest records that one knight, imprisoned for 4 years without charge, had lost all language, speaking only in garbled sobs and gasps. He would claw at the walls for hours until his fingers bled. John never visits them again. He does not need to. Their existence has already served its purpose. Grim truth no 3, these prisoners became ghosts before death spectres used to haunt the dreams of his enemies. The event echoes for decades. French chroniclers write of the silent fortress of the English tyrant. English rebels begin to cite Mirabeau as one of the catalysts for what will one day become rebellion. But that is later. For now, you're still in that chamber, and the smell of rotting wounds, of unwashed flesh, of quiet despair is unforgettable. You step over bones. You brush past iron rings rusted into the walls. The names of the dead are not remembered by the realm. But John remembers. He remembers who challenged him, and he remembers the silence that followed. The siege was over, but the message was just beginning. You descend beneath the stone floors of a royal keep. The torches flicker against damp walls. The air smells of rot, wet cloth, and something worse, old blood. This is not a dungeon for war captives, not a prison of protocol. This is where King John keeps the forgotten. You hear it now, low moans, iron scraping against stone, a single scream cut short by something wet. John does not merely punish rebellion. He enjoys reshaping the soul of resistance. Torture under his rule becomes not just a tool, but an art. There are no trials here, no judges, no scribes, only devices. A nobleman once suspected of disloyalty is brought here not for conviction, but for instruction. His teeth are pulled out one by one until his mouth is a bloody pit. He's sent home barely alive so his neighbors may see the price of suspicion. Grim truth number 1 under King John interrogation was rarely about answers. It was about example. You pass a rack where a landowner was stretched until his joints dislocated his crime withholding grain during a royal levy. Elsewhere, a chamberlain was ordered to break the fingers of a clerk suspected of hiding documents. The man's bones were smashed with a mallet, and his hands were left dangling like meat from a butcher's hook. Historians still fiercely debate whether these tortures were carried out by John's direct command, or simply tolerated in his name. But the results speak clearly: a kingdom twisted in fear. You hear whispers in abbeys of men being blinded by heated copper coins, of rebels whose genitals were crushed in vices, then hung in the square by their own entrails. These are not acts of rogue knights or bandits. They bear the seal of the king. Grim truth the two. John turned castles into factories of fear. The walls did not protect, they silenced. At Nottingham Castle, a man is lowered slowly into boiling oil. His wife watches from a tower. She is next. Her body is later found in a river, limbs broken and bound. The records list the crime as treason by silence. John surrounds himself with men who require no orders. Sheriffs, torturers, tax collectors, all empowered to act as they see fit. Their one duty: bring in gold, break the disobedient, and leave nothing unburnt. You move now through the cells of Corfe again, deeper this time. There is a pit where prisoners were buried alive, still moaning, their mouths filled with earth to muffle sound. Above it, scrawled into the stone by bleeding fingers, "We are still loyal." You feel that inscription in your chest. Grim truth number 3. Loyalty under King John was a death sentence either way. Refuse him and you suffer. Obey him and you become complicit in his hell. And yet his own household is not safe. A cook once spills a dish during a feast. John has him boiled alive in wine before the entire court. A noblewoman screams. She is dragged out beaten and disappears from the records. There is no limit, no line. Even clergy are not spared. A bishop who criticizes the king's brutality is seized. His tongue is nailed to a board and left to fester. When he dies, his family is billed for the nails. You wonder how a man can sleep after such horrors. But John sleeps well drunk, fed, and surrounded by guards who fear him more than any foreign enemy. He sees plots in every corner. Even his own wife Isabella is rumored to be locked in her chambers, watched constantly. Some claim he once killed a midwife in a rage, suspecting her of whispering prayers to protect the child from its father. The truth. The records are silent, but the fear is deafening. And in all this darkness, John's grip tightens. Torture becomes institutional. Records disappear. Witnesses vanish. Barons grow silent, not out of loyalty, but from the memory of what they saw in the lower chambers. John believes pain creates order, that broken bones are the bricks of stability, that England is a kingdom not of God's will, but of his wrath. And so you descend again. One more scream, one more cell, and the smell the same every time. Blood, ash, and something ancient hopelessness. The fires have long since burned out, but the smoke remains etched into the memories of entire villages raised on King John's orders. You ride now with his taxmen, his sheriffs, his butcher knights. Their saddlebags do not carry coin, but iron tongs and lengths of chain. You witness the true heart of John's England: scorched fields, mutilated peasants, silenced towns. In the year 1212, John orders a brutal campaign against the Welsh marches, not to conquer, not to expand, but to send a message. What follows is a methodical devastation. Cattle slaughtered and left to rot in wells. Children burned alive inside chapels, while the doors are barred from outside. Entire villages vanish in what the scribes call cleansing. Grim truth number 1, King John wielded famine and fire as weapons of discipline. The countryside becomes a testing ground for royal cruelty. In Yorkshire, a community that fails to meet its grain tithe is punished by the systematic removal of its able-bodied men. They are taken at dawn, their hamstrings cut, and returned home screaming, crawling, useless. And the women John's forces do not spare them. Rape becomes standard practice in these punitive raids. One chronicle mentions women being nailed to barn doors as warnings not for crimes, but for speaking Latin prayers instead of Norman ones. Obscure but brutal, in the village of Godstow, the king's men are recorded to have cooked and eaten the dogs before setting fire to the cottages. Why? Because the people refused to pay a hunting tax. You hear the stories in whispers: a newborn flung from a parapet to punish a father's unpaid shootage. a priest flayed for hiding church valuables from the crown. The sacred is no shield, the innocent no protection. Historians still fiercely debate whether these localized atrocities were directly authorized, or whether John's general orders of suppression simply unleashed monsters under his banner. But you follow the path of smoke and charred bones, and the trail leads always back to the king. Grim truth to John weaponized hunger. His grain seizures became tools of control. In 1214, when rebellions begin to flicker again among the barons, John escalates. He does not negotiate. He does not bribe. He starves entire regions into compliance. Grain is seized livestock, driven off cliffs, granaries set alight while children watch. In Lincolnshire, a farmer writes in charcoal on the wall of his home, "The king eats and we die." Days later, he and his family are found dead, locked inside, with nothing but dirt and candle wax in their stomachs. You ride on through East Anglia, where a resistance was rumoured. What remains is ash. All recorded inhabitants either killed or fled. The only human trace, a foot severed at the ankle hanging from a gatepost with a sign in Latin, "Justice." You see now why the countryside does not rebel en masse. Fear is more effective than fire. Because fire ends, fear remains, and John knows this. His spies infiltrate merchant guilds, monasteries, even beggar bands. A man speaks ill of the king in a tavern and vanishes by morning. The barkeep, who overheard tongue, cut out. His daughter, taken. Grim truth number 3. Under John, rebellion was not just crushed, it was erased. The barons begin to turn not out of moral clarity, but existential panic. This man is not a king, they realize. He is a Moor devouring land, loyalty and lineage. And then comes the final straw, 1215. John raises yet another levy, another cruel tax, to fund his disastrous wars abroad. But the coffers are dry, the people are broken. The nobles, now watching their bloodlines and holdings threatened with annihilation, move to act. But the king is not done. Before the barons can organize John's sheriffs, conduct one last purge. Children of dissenting lords are rounded up and held as collateral, their fates unknown, their parents paralyzed. You ride past one final village. The air reeks of lime and ash. The trees are bare of fruit, but full of bones. From a distance, they look like wind chimes, white, hollow, singing, only when the wind howls through the valley. A king did this, and still he wants more. Because for King John, cruelty is not a means. It is the message itself. Welcome, seekers of forgotten horrors. Tonight, we plunge into a chapter of history stained with mutilation, mass blinding, and imperial vengeance. The tale of a ruler so cold, his enemies called him the Bulgar Slayer. You stand at the threshold of the Byzantine Empire in the late 10th century, where intrigue coils like a serpent through marble halls, and blood is the ink of law. The imperial diadem rests on your skull, but you're not a man. You're barely 5. Basil, they call you. Basil II. Born into purple robes, yes, but no nursery lullabies here. Instead, you're handed to generals who teach you discipline by letting you watch disloyal soldiers lose their tongues. You learn to walk on marble floors slick with spilled intestines after a coup attempt in the palace baths. No bedtime stories, only whispered conspiracies in your corridors. Your father, Romanos II, dies suspiciously young. Some say poison, others say divine punishment. Historians still fiercely debate whether the death was a quiet assassination or a natural collapse hastened by gluttony. It hardly matters. At 3, you inherit the empire. But your crown means nothing in a palace ruled by eunuchs, regents, and the cunning general Nicephorus Phocas, your protector. Nicephorus claims the throne for himself, marries your mother, and fills the palace with armor-clad monks who pray with one hand and execute dissenters with the other. You sit silently beside him during meetings, eyes absorbing everything. You watch him torture tax collectors for embezzlement, burning their palms on heated iron books to teach literacy through flame. He's not grooming a child emperor, he's building a puppet. But you never forget. Then comes the first lesson in betrayal. Nicephorus is murdered in his bed by your mother's new lover, John Tzimiskes. Blood pools around the emperor's shaved head. You see it. You step over it. You attend the coronation of his killer the next day, still wearing the same clothes. You begin to understand Byzantium. As you grow older, your role is ornamental. You ride beside generals, silent and grim. During the Battle of Arcadiopolis, you watch your empire's troops impale captured Pecheneg warriors with iron stakes, planting them like grotesque vines outside the city walls. You never flinch. When you finally wrest power back quietly, methodically, ruthlessly, you do it not with a sword but with patience. You sideline generals, buy out allies, and erase threats. Your brother Constantine serves as a decorative co-emperor. He drinks, he hosts orgies. You sharpen your vengeance. And then civil war erupts. You, Basil II, are barely 20 when Barda Skleros, a noble with a blade and a grudge, rises in revolt. He commands half the empire's armies. The battlefield becomes your tutor. You study siegecraft beside shattered catapults. You walk among dying men, groaning in foreign tongues. You see a rebel commander hung upside down from the ramparts, entrails coiled around a torch. This is your education. You don't weep for the dead. You start ordering mutilations. When you capture deserters, you don't execute them, you remove their noses. Let them live. Let them be reminders. In Constantinople, mutilation is not merely punishment, it's erasure. A man without a face cannot rule. A general without eyes cannot lead. The knife becomes your signature. You win, slowly, bloodily, but not alone. The Rus arrive, fierce fur-clad mercenaries from the frozen north, swinging axes taller than a man. You hire them. They rampage through rebel ranks, severing limbs with surgical indifference. When Skleros is defeated, his soldiers are given a choice: swear loyalty or lose a hand. Thousands become stump-fisted oath-breakers. The Empire calls you Basil the Young. They don't know you yet, but they will. They will know you as the man who never smiled, who ate alone, who bathed in cold water, who sharpened swords while priests chanted peace. You are not a ruler, you are inevitability, and your lessons in blood have only just begun. The Empire breathes again, but not for long. No sooner has the civil war settled than the land cracks beneath your feet. Another revolt, this time led by Bardas Phocas, nephew of the emperor you once watched bleed into silk sheets. A man who believes power should return to his family line. He rises not with words but with legions, swords and siege engines. You, Basil, are surrounded. The whispers begin. The emperor is weak, a puppet again, a boy who hides behind Rus mercenaries. You answer those whispers not with proclamations, but with acts of deliberate, methodical cruelty. The roads to Anatolia are slick with rot. Villages suspected of sheltering rebels are razed. Men impaled along trading routes like grotesque signposts. In Attaleia, you storm through rebel strongholds and force prisoners to dig mass graves, then bury them alive with their comrades' corpses. One survivor claws his way out screaming through blood-caked lips. You let him live. You want that scream to travel. Bardas Phocas calls himself emperor. You call him a corpse. But not yet. You meet him on the field near Abydos. The battlefield is steaming with morning mist, and your breath hangs in the cold air. You watch Focus from across the plain. He grins beneath his helm. That's when fate answers you with a spectacle so grotesque, it becomes myth. As he charges sword raised, his horse stumbles. His head slams against the pommel with bone-splitting force. He drops dead before striking a blow, brain hemorrhage, instant death. Your soldiers swarm his body. Some claim his face spasmed in death, as if mocking you. You order the corpse decapitated. The head is sent to Constantinople, displayed on a gilded spike above the city gates. For weeks, crows argue over the eyes. You never look away when passing. His followers, you do not forgive. You do not jail. You mutilate. Captured officers are branded with the words, "Traitor to Basil." Their eyelids are sewn open, their tongues removed. One is rumored to be kept alive for 9 days without food, sustained only by wine forced down his gullet until his organs give out. These acts are not whispers in your court, they are law. This is the moment your empire learns who you truly are. You develop a fondness for blinding not just for rebels, but for any official whose loyalty feels lukewarm. Eyes you declare can betray. A man without eyes can still breathe, still suffer, still serve as an example. In one case, a tax official is caught embezzling. You don't have him executed. You sentence him to live blind and castrated with molten wax poured into his ears. Let him feel the silence of justice. Let him exist as a cautionary tale to every bureaucrat. The court begins to fear your footsteps. Servants go silent when you pass. Some historians still fiercely debate whether you actually outlawed mirrors from your private quarters, insisting no man, not even yourself, should gaze upon vanity. Others believe it was simply a tactic remove all reflection, and even the emperor becomes legend, not man. But nothing prepares them for what you do next. After crushing Focus, you move against the western provinces where whispers of treachery still linger. You summon the local governors, force them to kneel on stone steps, and personally remove their fingernails one by one. Their screams echo through the palace courtyard. You do not blink. You walk the halls of the great palace with the eyes of a man who's seen too much and intends to show others what that feels like. Your power is now absolute. Your face appears on coinage, yes, but the empire begins to worship your shadow more than your image. Fear becomes your ambassador, and yet the rebels are not gone. Their seeds spread. So you plant something worse, paranoia. Spies are embedded in every monastery, every town square. Monks whisper your name during Vespers. Traders fear that a stray comment about taxes might see them nailed to their storefronts. You do not hide this network. You boast of it. You want them to fear the silence. One scholar dares to write a critique of your economic reforms. His tongue is removed. His hands crushed beneath marble blocks. The manuscript is burned not because it's heretical, but because it dares to analyze. Thought itself becomes treason. Through it all, you remain silent, stoic, untouched. When asked why you do not marry, you say nothing. When a noble woman offers herself in alliance, you exile her family. Pleasure is weakness. Softness is betrayal. Warmth is for corpses. You keep your blade sharp because you know beyond every blinding, every branding, war still waits. And it will come from the north. It will wear chainmail and speak in Bulgarian. You're ready. You face the north now. Bulgaria, wild, mountainous, relentless. To your court, it is a thorn. To you, it is a promise, pain, resistance, and the chance to perfect cruelty into something eternal. The Bulgarian Empire under Tsar Samuel is no minor threat. He leads armies like waves, fast, unpredictable, fanatically loyal. They carve into your western provinces with knives and fire. They burn fortresses. They execute governors. They dare send your commanders back in sacks of scorched meat and bone. This is no border skirmish. This is war. You respond with silence at first, but inside your war chambers you bleed maps. You spend nights drawing campaigns with icy precision. You will not simply defeat Bulgaria, you will erase it. The Bulgar campaign begins not with banners but with black smoke. You burn towns to the ground before the armies ever clash. You order villages suspected of harboring Bulgarian spies to be flayed, yes flayed, and left on their own gates as a warning. One town tries to resist. You have its elders impaled and placed in a circle around their own temple facing inward. Fire consumes them slowly. Then at Sirmium, your legions strike. The clash is not war, it is dismemberment. The air stinks of blood and churned earth. Your men leave no survivors. Bulgarian soldiers once captured are nailed to their own shields and tossed into rivers. Some float for miles, bloating headless warnings gliding downstream. Samuel responds with horror. His tactics grow desperate. He flees battles, leaves his sons to die. You pursue. The mountains offer him cover, but your discipline is iron. Your soldiers march until their feet rot inside their boots. You promise them land gold, but they march more for you than for spoils. They fear your silence more than they fear the enemy's steel. In Thessaly, one of your patrols discovers a monastery harboring wounded Bulgars. The abbot begs mercy. You grant it, then order the monastery sealed with the men still inside. A single torch does the rest. A few monks escape. Their tongues are cut out so they cannot spread lies. One truth emerges from the smoke. You do not conquer. You consume. By the time you reach the heart of Samuel's territory, your army is a machine of slaughter. You conduct massacres like rituals, methodical, rehearsed, efficient. In one instance, your forces corner a Bulgarian unit in a ravine. Instead of a direct assault, you block the exits and catapult flaming pitch for 6 hours. The screams do not stop for 2 days. Villagers try to flee. You order the roads trapped. One young girl is found with a note sewn into her dress. He is not a man, he is the night. Still, Samuel resists. So you go further. At Skopje, you issue one of your most infamous commands. All surviving soldiers are to be branded with a cross on their foreheads, not for faith, but for shame. You have the branding irons cooled slowly so the flesh sizzles rather than chars. The marks last a lifetime. In later years, Byzantine towns will refuse to hire anyone bearing that scar. Your name spreads like plague. And then in 1014, after decades of brutal, relentless war, you crush Samuel's army at the Battle of Cleidion. The terrain favors you narrow mountain passes, dry air, no escape. You ambush them with such precision that entire regiments are butchered before they draw swords. The screams blend with the metal howling of twisted armor and breaking bones. Blood congeals so thick the soil won't absorb it. Tsar Samuel flees. You don't pursue. You turn to the prisoners. There are 14,000 of them. And you make your choice. You order them blinded, not executed, not ransomed, blinded. Every group of 100 men is assigned a single soldier to keep one eye. That one-eyed man will lead the other 99 home. You want Samuel to see what's left of his army before death takes him. The process takes days. Eyelids torn open, iron pokers, vinegar to sterilize only when you feel merciful. The fields reek of urine and scorched flesh. The blinded scream until their throats shred into silence. Some go mad and claw their own faces. When they stagger back to Samuel, he collapses. He dies 2 days later of stroke of heartbreak of fear. Historians still fiercely debate which killed him. Does it matter? You never raise a cup in celebration. You don't smile. You don't gloat. You return to Constantinople without fanfare. But the message has traveled. The world has now seen what you are. The Bulgar Slayer, Basil II, and the world will not forget. The empire bows before you. Foreign kings whisper your name with a tremor. But inside Constantinople, your grip tightens. You return not as a hero, but as a force of judgment. In your chambers you keep no luxuries, no gold-threaded cushions, no dancing girls, no perfumes. Just a bed of stone, a table of cold iron, and scrolls covered in maps, tax codes, and reports of disloyalty. You sleep in your armor more nights than not. Servants learn quickly, never speak unless spoken to. One man sneezes during your meal. The next day, his tongue is nailed to the palace wall labeled an example in breath control. No one eats near you again. Your own brother Constantine, the soft co-emperor, becomes more nuisance than partner. He wants parties, parades. You give him silence. Eventually, he drinks himself into irrelevance. Some believe he dies by poison. Some say he lives locked in his own palace wing, surrounded by eunuchs and silence. Historians still fiercely debate his fate, but none debate who held the true power. You build no pleasure gardens. You erect no marble fountains in your name. Instead, you build prisons, efficient, secretive, windowless vaults under the palace complex. A guard once describes them as holes that forget the living. You don't torture for information. You torture for memory. You invent new techniques, or rather, revive old Roman ones. Hooks under ribs. Water until lungs collapse. Slowly turning spiked wheels to draw out muscle fibers inch by inch. Some methods are reserved only for nobles, as a lesson birth won't save you. A senator dares question your tax reforms. His wife and children are made to watch as he is disemboweled publicly, his intestines wound onto a spindle. The crowd is silent, not from horror, but from understanding. And still you give no speech. You never explain. In your court, silence is a doctrine. The less you say, the more they fear. You standardize the themes, the Byzantine military provinces, and impose ferocious tax levies on their governors. Those who fail to deliver are hung upside down in front of their local churches. You want peasants to see what failure looks like. One bishop dares speak against this cruelty during Lent. You permit him to preach his sermon. Afterward, he's arrested, stripped, and marched through the streets with sheep intestines knotted around his throat. He dies on the steps of Hagia Sophia. No one preaches resistance again. The palace itself becomes colder. You reduce heating expenditures. You ban scented oil. Courtiers wear wool in midsummer, fearing that comfort might seem indulgent. You dine alone, always. There are rumors, of course, that you were cursed, that you feared warmth would soften your soul, that you had a mirror shattered because it dared reflect your aging face. One servant claims you once said, "A ruler must be colder than the grave he creates." No one knows if it's true, but it feels true, and that's all that matters. Even your bureaucracy bleeds efficiency. You institute the alalengion, a tax that holds wealthy landowners accountable for their poorer neighbors' unpaid dues. The rich begin turning each other in. Families fracture. Brotherhood collapses under the pressure of imperial math. You weaponize distrust. When famine strikes in Cappadocia, you send food, but also spies. Those who hoard are executed, publicly, with rusted blades, slowly. And yet, in your terror, the empire flourishes. Borders hold. Trade surges. Roads are safe. Pirates are crucified along harbour cliffs. One Italian merchant complains that Byzantium is less an empire than a machine powered by blood. He is not wrong. You begin dressing in black, not robes of mourning but of intent. You attend church less, but when you do, the clergy kneel lower than required. A few even grovel. You never speak during services, only watch. You are not feared as a man. You are feared as a condition, something that happens when one disobeys the empire. Your soldiers adore you not out of love, but out of terror masked as loyalty. You pay them well. You train them hard. You bleed them on discipline drills. And when they fail, you punish them personally. One general disobeys orders during a minor campaign in Armenia. He returns expecting demotion. Instead, you invite him to a banquet. He sits, eats, drinks, laughs. Then you bring out the scroll of his offense and nail it to his chest with a blade. He dies over dessert. The next general follows orders to the letter. By this point, no rebellion dares rise. Even the Persians hesitate to provoke you. A border skirmish is resolved not with a battle, but with a single letter bearing your wax seal. When the enemy opens it, they find not words, just a dagger. You send no further messages. They retreat on their own. And yet, there is no joy, no celebration, no crown ceremony. You do not care for monuments. You care for results. The empire bends, not out of awe, but because breaking is worse. You are Basil, Emperor of Byzantium, slayer of rebels, blind giver, cold architect of stability through pain. And you have no intention of dying. By now, the very air in Constantinople tastes of iron and obedience. You, Basil VI, the Bulgar slayer, have ruled longer than most men live. Decades of blood smoke and silence lie behind you. And yet you do not slow. If anything, your will grows sharper with age. You are not here to enjoy power. You are here to perfect its use. Your eyes are tired, but always watching. Your face is lined, but never soft. You patrol the empire like a storm. No banquet halls, no golden retreats, just inspection after inspection. You ride in the same armor you wore at Clydion. Rusted, cracked, blackened. You refuse replacement. Your generals dare not offer one. In the east, new enemies rise, the Fatimids bold and fanatical, prodding at your Syrian borders. Others might sue for peace. You sharpen your blade. At Aleppo, a garrison under your command is caught fleeing an ambush. You don't ask why. You order the survivors to kneel and have their kneecaps shattered with hammers. Cowards will not stand again, you tell the next group of recruits. None flee art after that. You still maintain a spy network unmatched in Christendom. Letters are intercepted. Dissenters caught whispering are given silent treatment, a method of punishment where the victim is sealed in a pitch-black cell, fed irregularly and forbidden any human voice. After a month, their minds rupture. Some scream prayers to empty corners. Others chew off their own fingers. No one knows the true number of those lost this way. The palace keeps no public records. Only your scribes know, and their tongues are cut out upon retirement. And yet, in this suffocation, Byzantium thrives. Tax revenue reaches unprecedented levels. Roads rebuilt under your orders stretch from Thrace to the Levant. Banditry is nearly extinguished. Even heretical sects like the Paulicians fall silent. You crush them with such force their texts vanish from history. One monk is flayed and hung in the monastery garden as a permanent warning. His skin bears the words, "Faith without obedience is treason." Even the Orthodox Church dares not resist you. The Patriarch of Constantinople once complained softly about your harsh treatment of a bishop in Antioch. You do not respond with words. You send him a box containing a single bloody tooth and a ring the remains of the bishop. Nothing else. He preaches loyalty after that. The provinces kneel. Anatolia grows fertile again. Sicily sends you tribute. Armenia signs treaties in fear. You've become something less than human and more than myth. And still you walk alone. You refuse a wife. You refuse concubines. You refuse heirs. The court begs. You do not answer. You will not divide your empire among weak bloodlines. You trust only yourself. Historians still fiercely debate whether your celibacy was a matter of discipline, trauma, or contempt. Perhaps it was all three. You once told a general just loud enough to be overheard, the empire does not need a sun. It needs a shadow. That shadow stretches now across every border. But old age creeps unwelcome and unannounced. Your gait slows. Your cough deepens. The wound in your leg from a campaign years ago refuses to heal. Still you ride with your troops. Still you inspect prisons. Still you walk barefoot across your own barracks in winter to prove a point pain is nothing compared to fear. In the final years, your portraits grow rarer. You stop attending ceremonies altogether. But when rumors arise of your death, you order a prisoner publicly tortured in your name. The screams carry across Constantinople's harbour. The rumors die. You've become something grotesque and sacred, a living relic of horror and order. And even now, the people obey. But fate, as always, is treacherous. In 1025, you prepare another campaign, this time against Sicily. You plan to wrest it from Muslim control. A grand invasion, your final masterpiece. Your generals await you at the harbour ships, ready soldiers, singing your name in disciplined unison. But you never arrive. A fever grips you, not fierce, just relentless. The kind that starts in the marrow and climbs slowly. You refuse medicine. You refuse rest. You attempt to give orders until your voice fails. And then silence. You die alone on the floor of your chamber, wrapped in your old campaign cloak. No fanfare. No final speech. Just a grim exhale that leaves behind a kingdom of corpses, discipline, and legacy. Your body is buried without glory. You had ordered it yourself. No imperial tomb, just a soldier's grave. The inscription, Basil in war. He was invincible, and by his own will buried here. And with that, the terror you embodied sinks into the stone, but your shadow does not fade. Even in death you rule. The empire you leave behind, Byzantium, in the year 1025, is stronger, richer, and more secure than it has been in centuries. But it stands not on diplomacy or enlightenment. It stands on broken spines and cauterized eye sockets. You are Basil II, the Bulgar slayer, and your legacy is carved into the bones of a generation. After your death, the court breathes but shallowly. No one dares celebrate too loudly. Servants speak in whispers. Your cold presence still lingers in the drapery in the iron candle holders in the dustless halls. Some swear they see your shadow pacing the corridors at night, armor clinking faintly, inspecting obedience. The empire tries to move on. Your brother Constantine finally rules alone. He feasts, he drinks, he makes art and poetry. But the machine you built is too massive, too blood-slick to be governed by a soft hand. Within 2 decades, the borders begin to crumble. Governors grow bold. Generals disobey orders. Gold is spent faster than it's earned. Because fear Basil is not hereditary, the blinding Acledion becomes legend. Children whisper it as ghost story. Poets try to soften it. They cannot. Too many lived it. Too many one-eyed men wandered through marketplaces, led by the sightless. They wore your mark. They were your mark. Your administration had kept them fed, had kept pirates nailed to their ships, had kept the clergy mute and the provinces orderly. But your successors forget the price of that order. They forget what you paid in bone and silence. Soon heresies reappear. Nobles grow fat and corrupt. The army softens. The West presses in. The Seljuks arrive swords-thirsty, unafraid. And what do they find? An empire that no longer remembers how to bleed on purpose. The same churchmen who once prostrated before you begin rewriting you. They call you tyrant. They call you godless. They say you ruled with death rather than faith. They build new saints to bury your name beneath their chants. But your victims remember. In Bulgaria, your name is spat like a curse. Their chronicles do not soften you. They call you butcher, demon, he who drank light and pissed darkness. And yet, even they cannot deny the finality of your rule. When Basil ruled, they say the sun itself feared to rise late, and still pieces of you remain. The tax system you reforged lasts decades. The military themes echo into the Comnenian era. The shadows of your prisons remain beneath the palace stones. And deep in the vaults of Constantinople, scribes whisper that somewhere hidden among the imperial archives, there is a second tomb sealed by your command containing the flayed skin of 10 traitors, each tattooed with a confession. No one has dared to open it. Your greatest cruelty perhaps was not in what you did, but what you prevented. You never loved. You never trusted. You never let your empire be human. And in the end, maybe, that was the only way it survived as long as it did. The marble is cracked now. The iron gates rust. But if you listen closely, the stones of Constantinople still whisper his name. Basil II did not rule with hope, nor with inspiration. He ruled with certainty, an unyielding surgical certainty, that every weakness must be amputated. He did not rally men, he made them tools. He did not guide the empire, he enforced it. Where others saw people, he saw pressure points. His hands were calloused, not from building, but from tearing down. He removed the disease of rebellion with fire. He cured corruption with mutilation. And for decades it worked. The empire prospered, but it came at the cost of everything that breathes. In the centuries that followed, Byzantium would rise and fall in cycles of glory and collapse. None would match the grip of Basil. And perhaps that was his final lesson. Peace through pain is possible, but it cannot last. You can blind armies, you can silence gods, you can bury voices beneath marble and memory. But eventually time finds a way to scream again. And so tonight, as you sit safe in your home, far from war, far from burning monasteries and blind soldiers led by one-eyed guides, consider this. Had you lived then, had you crossed him, had you spoken out, you would not be alive to hear his story. Welcome, seekers of forgotten horrors. Tonight we plunge into a chapter of history stained with fire. Fanaticism and flesh when Christ's name was carved into corpses by crusaders who swore they served heaven. The year is 1209. The sun rises over the fortified city of Béziers in southern France, where stone walls shelter a population of some 20,000 Cathars Catholics, children, craftsmen and coiners alike. But this dawn brings no ordinary day. It brings the roar of hooves, the glint of steel, and the march of papal fury. The Albigensian crusade has begun. You stand within the walls surrounded by townsfolk who believe themselves safe under the might of high ramparts. But outside, a different faith prepares to deliver salvation by sword. The Crusaders' men sent by Pope Innocent III have come not to convert, but to cleanse. Their goal is simple: eradicate the Cathar heresy. Their method, annihilation. Béziers refuses to hand over its heretics, and so the siege begins. It lasts only hours. On July 22nd, the Crusader army, tens of thousands strong, surges toward the gates. Some defenders, young and reckless, launch a sortie hoping to disrupt the enemy. Instead, they shatter discipline. The Crusader mob floods in behind them. There is no order, no plan, only the raw animal instinct to slaughter. What happens next is a historical atrocity, unmatched in cold-blooded ambiguity. Abbot Arno Amalric, the papal legate, reportedly declares, "Kill them all. God will know his own." It's a statement historians still fiercely debate. Some claim it's apocryphal, others insist it echoes the real papal attitude. But what is undeniable is this: the massacre that follows does not spare a soul. You see mothers run, dragging children who scream only to be cut down by men with crosses on their chests. Churches, normally sanctuaries in times of siege, become death chambers. Refugees cram into the Church of St. Mary Magdalene, pleading for mercy beneath icons of the Virgin. They are locked inside, and the structure is set ablaze. Screams are muffled by collapsing stone and soot-choked lungs. You stumble across the city square, where bodies pile in heaps, some still twitching, others burned into unrecognizable clumps. Limbs stick out like torched kindling from pyres of civilians. Blood soaks the soil, puddling between cobblestones. The stench of rot mixes with incense and the copper tang of gore. It is not battle. It is butchery. There is no resistance. There is no distinction. Catholic priests are murdered alongside Catholic believers. Infants have their skulls dashed against the city walls. The massacre lasts all day, and by sunset Béziers is silent. When the counting ends, some chroniclers claim 20,000 dead. Others say 7,000. Even the lowest figure dwarfs comprehension. One chronicler notes with unshaken pride that neither age nor sex nor rank was spared. This is the church militant, unleashed not in foreign Jerusalem, but against its own European flock. And what do they gain? Béziers is reduced to ash. But in Rome, it is hailed as divine retribution. And you're left with a vision burned into your soul streets of severed limbs, heads on pikes outside a church, and voices begging in Occitan, a language that will soon be drowned in fire. 3 grim truths emerge from Béziers 1. Religious zeal requires no foreign enemy. It can turn inward with even greater ferocity. 2. Sanctuary means nothing when doctrine turns God into a weapon. 3. You would not have survived this. It did not matter what you believed, only that you were there. Before we descend further, consider marking this video for those who dare to witness history's true brutality. Subscribe if you crave these forgotten truths. Post your location and local time below as a chilling reminder of how distant this may seem and how easily it could return. Now steel your nerves, prepare for discomfort, and let the grim echoes of the past consume us. The Crusaders don't pause to mourn. The army moves south, driven not by strategic gain, but by righteous fire. And the slaughter of Béziers was just the beginning. The city of Carcassonne rises ahead, grey ramparts climbing out of the scorched countryside like a wound refusing to close. It is August 1209. You are among the survivors fleeing Béziers, blistered feet, bleeding clothes, stiff with dried blood, the screams of the burn still ringing in your ears. You think perhaps this city, strong and walled, will hold, that its count, Raymond Roger Trencavel, young but seasoned, will defend it. But you are wrong. He is not defending heresy. He is defending order, and for that he will be punished. The Crusaders arrive under a sun that feels hotter than it should. The army swells again, fanatics, opportunists, petty nobles, hoping for spoils. Remember, Pope Innocent III promised full remission of sins to those who took up the sword. Every act of brutality here is done with heaven's blank check. Carcassonne is soon surrounded. Inside, panic spreads faster than plague. Food runs low. The wells are poisoned. Some say the water turns black, some say it reeks of sulfur. The dead line the walls, their skin splitting in the sun. You don't eat, you barely speak, you wait. But Raymond Roger dares to parley. It's a fatal mistake. He enters the Crusader camp under a white flag seeking terms. They chain him in a tent. 2 months later, he is dead, likely of dysentery, but whispers speak of poison or slow starvation in chains. Historians still fiercely debate whether it was murder or neglect, but either way, it was betrayal. And the city, it surrenders without a sword drawn. But surrender is no shield. You watch as the gates creak open, not to deliver war, but to welcome humiliation. The entire population is stripped naked, men, women, children, and forced out of the city under a blazing sun. Over 20,000 people shamble into the dust eyes, downcast skin, blistering dignity, carved away by the gaze of armed men. The Crusaders don't need to kill this time. They erase. Carcassonne is emptied. Its citizens dispossessed. Trencavel's lands are seized by Simon de Montfort, a noble of unspeakable cruelty, who now becomes the church's executioner in southern France. He rebuilds the city not as a home but a fortress of suppression. New walls rise not to protect lives but to break spirits. The Cathars have lost another haven, and this time not in blood but in silence. You think perhaps this is better. No screams, no piles of limbs, but then you hear the stories of what happens to those who refuse to recant. The perfecti, the Cathar spiritual leaders, are rooted out slowly, methodically. Their homes burned, their writings destroyed, and when found, they are offered a simple choice: confess and convert or burn. The executions begin quietly. 2 here, 4 there, always with ceremony, with the blessing of monks with hymns as the flames are lit. One woman, a healer, refuses to recant and is tied to a stake with her infant in her arms. She sings as the flames rise. You learn this fire is not fast. It chews. It eats the eyes first. The screams are not brief. They rise in crescendo, cut only by the snapping of sinew. The stench of roasted flesh becomes part of the landscape. It clings to clothes. It clogs the air. You don't cry. You don't breathe. You simply witness. 3 grim truths sear into your bones here. 1. Surrender is not peace. It is rebranding destruction under silence. 2. Even death can be made into ritual, sanitized, into holiness. 3. You don't need a sword to commit atrocity, just a mandate, and enough witnesses willing to look away. And yet, even as towns fall and fire consumes heretics, the Cathar faith does not die. It goes underground. Preachers walk in darkness, traveling by night, hiding in cellars disguised as beggars. They whisper the old truths in quiet corners, that the world is evil, that flesh is a prison, that the true God rejects this brutality. Their resistance is not with blades, it is with survival. And the church knows that survival is the greatest heresy of all. You ride with the Inquisition now, not by choice, not as one of them, but because to survive here in the smouldering wreckage of Languedoc, you must watch closely. You must know how the machinery of brutality refines itself. You must smell the incense over blood and understand how mercy is deformed into a weapon. It is 1233. The fires of Béziers and Carcassonne, have faded into black ash, but something colder has replaced them. More efficient, more terrifying, the Inquisition. Pope Gregory IX gives birth to it, not with swords, but with scrolls. Dominican friars robed in white and black like vultures dressed for court sweep into town after town armed with papal authority and an insatiable need for confession. And you see it clearly, this is no crusade of armies anymore. It's a war of paperwork, of whispers, of ledgers stained with names and initials and accusations too vague to prove, too deadly to deny. In Toulouse, the process begins with the Edict of Faith, a public command for all citizens to come forward and denounce heresy. Silence is treated as guilt, and so they speak. You witness it, neighbors pointing fingers. A baker turns in a midwife. A father accuses his daughter. One old woman claims her friend prays too often in silence. That is enough. The Dominicans record everything. The suspects are seized usually at night, always silently, always without warning. They vanish into stone-walled domus inquisitiones. Interrogation is not swift. It is slow, calculated. You are dragged in and asked one question over and over. Do you believe there are two gods? You say no. You are not believed. Torture is now doctrine. Iron boots filled with boiling oil. The strappado, your arms wrenched behind you body, dropped until shoulders rip. Fire applied not to kill but to open. The inquisitors tell you pain is holy. Pain reveals truth. Pain cleanses the soul. You believe this only once the day you hear a child scream. 12 years old. His crime. He refused to say his mother was a heretic. You listen as he begs for water between screams. You wonder if your silence makes you complicit. It does. They do not burn everyone. Sometimes they dig. You find a crypt beneath Albi, once a wine cellar. Now it holds corpses, dozens, naked, emaciated, bones shattered by the rack. Flies hum like monks at matins. One man has a cross carved into his chest. Another has his tongue nailed to a block of wood. This is the hidden harvest of the Inquisition. Not just lives taken, but truths buried beneath stone. Historians still fiercely debate whether the death toll here reached tens of thousands or merely thousands. The Dominicans kept records, but they were selective. Some claim these methods save souls. Others say they destroyed culture itself. The Cathar texts gone. Not burned in public pyres, but lost in locked vaults buried in ecclesiastical silence. You meet one scholar who speaks of the Book of Two Principles, the core of Cathar belief, a dualist cosmology. He shows you a fragment smuggled from Montségur. Weeks later, he is arrested. You never see him again. And yet, in all this horror, you begin to understand something darker still. The Inquisition is not about belief. It is about obedience. 3 grim truths now brand your mind. 1. Truth can be criminal when it diverges from power. 2. Pain refines control more than any sermon. 3. Silence is no longer safety, it is expectation. Even now you see the faces of the condemned. One young man, a troubadour, sings a forbidden verse about the soul's light being trapped in flesh. For that, his tongue is torn out and nailed to a door. The Inquisitor watches with calm detachment. Let the devil speak through him now, he says. The town cheers. You realize this, the people no longer fear the Inquisition. They accept it, normalize it, internalize it. They have learned to denounce their own shadows. And that is when you understand the deepest wound of all this war has moved beyond flesh. It is now embedded in thought. The mountain fortress of Montségur looms before you. Perched like a scar on the Pyrenean cliffs, it's more than a stronghold. It's the final breath of the Cathar world. You ascend the winding paths with blistered feet and a stomach hollowed by dread. Here in the winter of 1243 to 1244, the siege begins not with thunderous charges, but with starvation and stillness. Montségur shelters the last of the perfecti, about 200 Cathar believers, along with knights, women and children. They are exhausted, half-starved, hunted for 20 years, but they will not convert. They will not recant. And that defiance in the eyes of church and crown must be cleansed with fire. You arrive with the besieging forces of the French crown, 10,000 strong. You see them lay wooden palisades, block the mountain's paths and wait. Winter gnaws at both camps, but time favors the attackers. Inside the fortress they pray. Cathar perfects do not eat meat. They do not lie. They do not kill. But they are surrounded by violence on every side. You glimpse one through a crack in the stone wall, her face gaunt, eyes alight with a serenity that terrifies you, as if she already breathes a different air. The siege drags on for months. Hunger chews the defenders. One desperate sortie fails. By March 1244, the fortress breaks not by storm, but by terms. Surrender is offered. Those who renounce the Cathar faith may live. Those who refuse will burn. More than 200 choose fire. You are there on March 16, 1244. They are marched down the path in silence. No resistance, no cries. Just the sound of bare feet on gravel. Witnesses say they sing as they walk. They are penned into a wooden stockade built at the mountain's base quickly, efficiently. The fuel is stacked chest high. You smell the resin in the logs, dry, eager. The executioners pause, and then the torch. You do not hear screams, not at first, just the roar of fire swallowing bodies, faith and memory. And then, as if torn from the earth itself, a sound erupts, part wail, part hymn, part rage. The flames rise so high that even the soldiers recoil. Montségur becomes a funeral pyre for a religion, but even as you watch their skin blacken and peel, even as fat drips into ash, you realize something grotesquely haunting. This is not the end. The Inquisition doesn't need heretics to burn anymore. It now has fear. And fear spreads faster than any gospel. 3 more grim truths sear into your conscience. 1. Martyrdom does not silence belief, it fossilizes it. 2. Fire once lit consumes beyond the body. 3. Memory is a threat to power and must be incinerated. Months after the burning, a Dominican friar tells you that a treasure was smuggled out of Montségur the night before its fall. Some say it was gold. Others whisper of books, Cathar gospels hidden deep in caves. You help dig one such cave near Ornolac, hands numb with cold. You find nothing. But one day a boy shows you a carved stone hidden under a floorboard. 2 interlocked circles etched with fire-blackened fingers. My grandfather said they sang, he whispers. They burned, but they sang. Historians still fiercely debate what exactly was lost at Montségur, whether a literal treasure, a final scripture, or just the last breath of a resistance to empire. What is not debated is the message it sent. No deviation will be tolerated. No memory will remain unguarded. You travel south, and you find villages that still refuse to speak the Cathar names aloud. A woman beats her child for asking about the good men. Fear, you realize, has outlived the fire. It now lives in the bloodline. In the years that follow, the region is rebuilt, but it is not reborn. The songs of the troubadours grow safer. The sermons sound identical. Diversity of belief has been replaced with a silence so thick it chokes. And through it all, the church thrives. The land is claimed, the heresy crushed, the heretics purged. But in your bones you know something else was killed here, something that cannot be put in ledgers. Wonder, individual faith, disobedient hope. You leave Montségur, but it never leaves you. Every fire you pass, every sermon you hear carries the same echo. You will burn too if you sing the wrong song. It is no longer a war, it is administration. You ride not with crusaders now, but with clerks and inquisitors, black-robed men who carry no swords, only parchment wax and knives of the spirit. You sit beside them in cramped halls, turned tribunals. The battles are over, but the reckoning has only begun. This is the new face of holy war, the Inquisition. It does not scream, it whispers, it does not stab, it records. You begin to understand that it is more efficient than fire, more permanent than armies, because it digs into the soul. You walk through the shattered towns of Languedoc, Albi, Toulouse, Narbonne. The Cathar houses have been confiscated, their books burned, their language outlawed. And yet the Inquisition insists they are not gone. Heresy, they say, is a rot, invisible, incurable. It festers in families, in memory, in lullabies. And so it must be rooted out. The interrogations begin. You are invited to sit in the rear of a church repurposed as a tribunal. The accused is an old woman, thin as parchment, whose only crime is that she does not believe priests can forgive sins. She calls them fat men who eat meat and lie. The inquisitor asks, "Who else have you told this to?" She hesitates. He smiles. The smile chills your spine more than fire ever did, because you realize he is not interested in her beliefs. He wants networks, maps of resistance, memory trails. She is jailed, not executed, no spectacle needed. She will die in a stone hole, nameless, erased. This is how the Inquisition wins, not by killing, but by making the living fear to remember. You are shown the chamber where reluctant confessors are purified. It is small, windowless. You see pulleys, iron shoes, water jars, and one particular object, the strappado. The strappado is simple, a rope tied to the wrists, hoisting the victim into the air, then drops suddenly, dislocating the shoulders. You hear the pop, you see the vomit. And the question is always the same. Who else you visit a town where 30 villagers have confessed to Cathar sympathies, not because they believe, but because they were denounced? No trial, just a list of names pinned to the church door. Some march barefoot through the streets, whipped, forced to wear yellow crosses stitched to their clothing until death. Children are born into these punishments. You see a boy whose mother confessed before he was born. He carries her cross on his back, marked for life. The Inquisition does not only punish, it brands, it documents. It teaches the public how to sniff out wrong thought. Soon, peasants are denouncing neighbors, children are accusing parents, wives are spying on husbands. You read an actual transcript. It's in Latin, methodical, obscene in its coldness. He claimed that Christ was an angel. She fed the heretic bread on a Tuesday. They did not genuflect before the host. Verdict, anathema, condemned, to be reconciled by fire. But fire is now only the last resort. The real weapon is removal. Erasure. A Cathar grave is discovered. The bones are unearthed, desecrated, cast into the river. The name is struck from all records. This is death beyond death, unburial of memory. The inquisitors go further. They collect testimonies from the elderly to reconstruct heretical villages, not to preserve them, but to build blueprints for future purges. You begin to grasp the genius of this machine. Fire terrifies, but paper lasts. Torture silences, but confession echoes. Martyrdom inspires, but obliteration erases. And this was all built in the name of Christ. You try to leave, You travel north toward Paris. But in every church, every monastery, every whispered sermon, the same structures replicate lists, records, accusations. The heresy of the Cathars is dead. And yet the need for heresy continues. The machine must have enemies, so it finds them. Waldensians, Beguines, mystic women, unapproved monks, anyone who dares speak directly to God without a priest in between. You return to Languedoc 10 years later. It is quiet, no singing, no colour. The troubadour songs are gone. The hilltop churches now fly banners of Rome. You ask a woman if she remembers the old days. She says nothing, but her hands tremble. You walk into a ruined Cathar house. The walls are covered in soot, but in one corner, etched with a fingernail, you see a single word: espera, to wait, to endure, to hope. The Inquisition could not erase that, not yet. You walk alone now. The armies are gone. The fires are cold. The tribunal silent. And yet the land still breathes death. You tread the hills of Languedoc, not as they once were, alive with song poetry, defiance, but as they are now, a graveyard without headstones. Beneath every vineyard, beneath every sheep path, every cracked chapel floor are the bones. Tens of thousands, crushed, scattered, unnamed. Cathar bodies dumped into mass pits. Women, men, babies, burned, dismembered, broken by torture, or simply starved in the dungeons. You pass a field outside Montségur, once a fortress, a final stand. The last defenders of Catharism held out here in 1244. Over 200 refused to recant, so they were taken bound and burned in a great cage at the mountain's base. They sang as the flames rose. You stand on that earth. Nothing marks the place, no plaque, no stones, just grass. But the wind is heavy, too heavy, because this war never ended. The Albigensian Crusade didn't just destroy a people. It annihilated a culture. You learn the Cathars weren't simply heretics. They were a society. They had their own theology, yes, but also a language Occitan, their own music, their own vision of morality: no swearing, no killing, no lies, no property, no church buildings. Priests who ate no meat and lived in poverty. Women who could preach and lead. All of it gone. You ask yourself, was it really about heresy? Or was it something darker? A cultural cleansing? A political conquest? A papal land grab masked in holy light? The region had wealth, autonomy, identity, and that frightened Rome. So the people were branded heretics. You see a list in the Vatican archives, hundreds of names struck through, not because of belief, but because of resistance. You come across the village of Bram. Few tourists visit. Fewer ask why the streets are so oddly wide. Once after the Crusaders took it, 100 men were blinded, their noses cut off. One eye was left for every 100th man to guide the rest home. They were sent back as a message: we are not just killing heresy, we are unmaking you. The mutilated survivors weren't buried with honor. They weren't remembered, but they walked. They walked blind through fields soaked in blood. This is what makes the Albigensian Crusade unique. It was not conquest by steel. It was annihilation by faith. You stand in an abandoned hamlet. No signs, no voices, just broken stones and overgrowth. A shepherd tells you its name: Le Mas des Hérétiques, the Mass of the Heretics. Once thousands lived here. Cathars, troubadours, farmers. Now it's rubble, a whisper. When the shepherd's dog starts barking, you realize there are no birds. Even the sky has grown quiet. The war ended centuries ago, but the memory was deliberately buried. France centralized. Occitan was outlawed. The church rebuilt itself on erasure. Children were taught that Cathars were demons. Songs of rebellion became nursery rhymes. Ruins were labeled Roman to avoid questions. But truth doesn't rot easily. It clings to stone, to language, to scarred hill paths and families with strange last names and elders who cross themselves wrong, to that feeling in your chest as you walk through Béziers or Carcassonne and realize beneath every cobble lies a mouth that screamed. And now you know. You see the horror not as a burst, but a slow suffocation. From 1209 to the mid-14th century, 100 years of persecution. Not one decisive blow, but a systematic deletion of a people's faith, identity, and memory. You ask finally, was it worth it? Was unity of doctrine worth genocide? Was God's love worth 20,000 corpses in Béziers? Was papal authority worth generations of silence? The answers never come. You stare at the sunset over Languedoc. The light is red. Red like the banners that once flew above Crusader spears. Red like the flames that took children who wouldn't kneel. Red like the final words of Arnon Amalric. Kill them all. God will know his own. The bones beneath your feet remember. And now so do you.